So, welcome, guys. Another Mids Watch. If you're watching this one live, you're catching us here on YouTube. If you're not catching us live, you're most likely going to be part of the Patreon, which I've left these things up. But let's get into it. This is probably one of the more important field reports to have come out in the last 7 years. I mean, it covers so many things. And I have a couple points to bring up here. One is going to be, what the hell does it mean when somebody is going Rambo? That's a term that's been thrown around a lot. And a lot of guys seem to mean that's just a guy who's like doing it too fast or too hard or taking his own self-interest too... It's like, no, it's none of that stuff. But we'll get into that in a minute. Next is the idea of like alpha being the leader of men in like a wolf pack and crap like that. Again, complete nonsense. And this is going to kind of show you why that whole line of thinking, that whole series of mental models is not going to work with you. The third one is where guys lose one-itis for their woman and start getting one-itis for, Chad, which is really just a construct to explain principles. But a lot of guys start having that on the brain, especially younger guys. And then the last part is, monk mode's kind of a joke. And so I'm gonna show you why monk mode doesn't mean anything to a red-pilled guy. It's some weird MGTOW talking point, but I'll get into it. So this field report came out, 5, 6, maybe 6 years ago from a character who's named himself Alpha as Wolf. And from experience, we knew for about a 2-year period, everybody started calling themselves some combination of alpha and some kind of canine. There's like an alpha chihuahua, alpha as wolf, alpha wolfhound, all this kind of crap. And the one thing you can take from it, I don't know why, I don't know how, but I know every time that these guys are the absolute biggest losers who always end up getting frustrated and leave because they refuse to take their life in their own responsibility. And this guy is no different. So he's actually a few field reports in right now. I mean, it started off fairly easy, same as anybody else. Lackluster sex life, doesn't know what to do. He's tall, he's fit, he's normally attractive, but he's just socially inept. And he's actively, if you remember the rules of attraction, it's be attractive and don't be unattractive. So his problem is squarely in don't be unattractive. And he starts it off with, hey, it's me again, an eventful day it seems. Anyways, during the day, kids were playing downstairs, the wife was working upstairs. I sneaked up, took the computer away, and started to play with her bobs and vagine. I've, just for the YouTube filter, by the way, I've replaced it because it was a very X-rated description of a field report. So if you start hearing some goofiness like bobs and vagine, that's me. Just go with it. You know what I'm getting at here. Anyway, she's all for it. And she wanted to give back, so we're half undressed and we're playing with each other. And so I made her O. She wanted me to O too, because she's peaking in her ovulation, and I insisted on a condom, which I don't have, but really, I didn't want to get all messy. I said, you'll return the favor this evening, and that she has to wear stockings and pantyhose. Yeah, that's my thing. So the evening comes, and we're watching movies. I get quite tired from lifting, and frankly, wouldn't mind her forgetting about it, but hey, she goes up, comes down in stockings, which has not happened in a long time. As a side note, the last time we smashed was like a month ago, and this is due to me deciding to go monk mode before I sort my stuff out. I mean, okay, you can't say no to a lady, can I? So I go for it, and I go for her bobs. She's like, oh, your hands are cold, warm them up. She's generally very sensitive to cold, so I ignore it, and she grabs my hands and pushes them away, which I consider, a fitness test. So I start playing and just grab her hands and wrestle her from my perspective, lightly, which makes her angry, and she tells me to stop, which I ignore and wrestle her some more. I mean, it's a fitness test, right? If I stop, I'm in her frame. Plus, this is kind of funny, and I really hate boring sessions. Now, I really did nothing but held her hands and pushed them around a bit. I didn't use force, but from her perspective, well, I'm almost twice as heavy. So anyway, she started to be angry more and more, and that I should stop. Now, I can't recall word for word how it went, but my association was more of someone who wants to control their dog, if you know what I mean. I'm the strong, powerful dog who used to be so nice and beta and not harmful in any way. So from there, she just starts bitching, like, what's got into you? I think you've changed. And this is the first time, by the way, since I found the red pill that she said anything. I never said a word. I just pondered what to do, stopped, and I'm realizing I'm in her frame. Go on, and I could really go over the top, especially considering my previous post. So I just said something like, geez, I'm just gonna go watch my movie, and I left. I took my computer, put on my headset, and continued watching. She was bitching as she always did, but I never paid attention to it or replied. Anyways, I'm at a crossroad. What if the red pill is wrong? Like, I'm in uncharted territory here, and I don't want to rule her with force, yet it seems like my sexual market value is just not high enough for her to really want me. But tonight, I think, was the first time her vagina actually failed her. Yeah. So, if you've been around the red pill space a while, you've done some readings, you kind of understand some things. This is like, take that field report, pause the video here, and just think to yourself, like, where were the mistakes made? Why were they being made? And what would you do in that situation? And then we're going to come back, and again, there's Jack Ten of Hearts, prolific poster, a lot of the stuff. He's always got his hands in some of the greatest things here, and this is probably one of the best takes I've seen on this one. But we started off here where he brings up a couple of Alpha as Wolf's points. Like, what if the red pill is wrong? He's like, yep, yeah, you figured it out, man. It couldn't possibly be because you're screwing this shit up. And then he brings up the line where the girl's like, hey, your hands are cold, warm them up. And she's very sensitive of cold. So he's like, let me get this straight. She's initiating here, right? It's not like you initiated and she's making you jump through a bunch of hoops and maybe you're going to get some starfish sex at the end. Right? Like, also, this sexual encounter is going to involve her pleasuring you. Since your enjoyment will probably be correlated to how authentically happy she seems to be when she's doing this, she probably figured she'd be able to give you a more enthusiastic blowy if your hands weren't cold and causing her nipples to invert. And you say she's sensitive to cold, so maybe, you know, it's not a frame thing. Maybe it's just your hands were cold. And instead of just harmlessly bantering about your cold hands with countless options, you know, like, well, you better do something to warm them up. That's the one that just comes to mind. You turn this into some sort of dominance test, which probably defeats the goal that she had in mind. You know, she's coming downstairs to seduce you. She wants to feel like the sexy seductress, and it's tough to do that when you're pinning her down for whatever reason. Perhaps to show you that you do, in fact, lift, bro. Brings up the next line of the guy where he's like, he stops and he realizes he's in her frame. He's like, I have no idea what you consider the definition of frame, but I am pretty sure that it's flat out wrong. She already entered your fucking frame because you told her she owed you one, and here she is, willingly complying. And all that she asks is that your frame involve the option to give her husband a blowjob without having cold boobs. And you're just sort of acting like this is some jerky third grade boy on the playground. Brings up Alpha as Wolf's previous post. He's like, my gut interpretation is that you default to shut up and play wrestle way too often as a response to any fitness test. And this is probably exasperated because you're perceiving way more fitness tests than she's actually giving. So externally, it just looks like she tries to communicate with you and you physically throw her around. This part, I actually like this part. So he's like, no, I can't recall word for word how it went. And Jack's like, you know, it fucking pisses me off when people say, I cannot recall exactly how the conversation went, because it's like, dude, stop. You're coming here to some random subreddit asking a bunch of random fucking strangers for opinions on your life and your marriage. Any help you receive will literally be correlated to how much introspection and thinking you did yourself. So when somebody says, I don't recall, it's just like such a fucking lazy thing to do. Like, you're asking internet strangers for advice on a situation that not only did you not reflect on yourself, but you can't even recall what happened to reflect on. Think about that one, champ. And then the last point here he brings up is he's bringing up this is an association of a girl trying to control a rabid dog and how he's like, you know, Alpha as Wolf. So your association is this way because you've somehow concluded that red pill says your wife is this mastermind female manipulator, and every action she takes is an attempt to subjugate and undermine you, which will naturally cause you to treat every interaction as an adversarial battle of dominance. And even worse, you're so clearly slow-witted. Single moms, a horrible position that's not my problem. That you can't even verbally respond to these imagined battles in your head, so you just default to some sort of physical dominance and think that's not entering her frame. So let me ask you this. Your wife literally got dressed up and tried to give you a blowjob, and somehow this led to an argument and no blowjob. So is red pill wrong, or are you? I love that part because it like puts everything into perspective. Like, there's just so much about it. Guys aren't self-aware. Guys keep appealing to this idea of Chad. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to think, what would the alpha do in this situation? What would that wolf do in this situation? He's trying to basically, he's got one-itis for an invented fiction. Like, Chad doesn't exist. Chad is a container word that we throw all of the qualities that have attractive men with, like, healthy sex lives. We put it in there so that way we don't have to say, you know, a guy with a predominance of alpha blah 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 and all these random definitions. So we can just say Chad and everybody's on the same page. Which is great when you're in a locker room and you're talking notes with men. Not so great if you're trying to explain it to an audience. So for you guys, generally speaking, when you say Chad, you talk about a guy who gets sexual interest from women with minimal conscious effort. Like, it's instinctive. That's your Chad. If you really have to think of an example of it, think of that football player, Gronkowski, I think is his name. Exactly. Adding to that, you notice his thing about monk mode? Like, for a month, he just stopped and detached from the world. He stopped initiating with his wife. He stopped working on, you know, the social aspect of it. He just retreated into his man cave. And you already know that if you've been red-pilled for any length of time, you probably have heard the 48 laws of power before. And it's one of them flat out in there is that isolation is bad. I don't remember the exact wording of the rule right now, but essentially don't isolate from the enemy. And in this case, you know, enemy being the wife, which when guys are starting out, they treat it as an adversarial process. That's normal. But it's not supposed to be that way. It's not adversarial. And this comes with something we came up with later. We call it the scoreboard theory of frame. Like, most guys will go through a 3-step process. It starts with understanding there's a scoreboard and the girl's racking up numbers while you're not. And then it's learning how to put up your own points on the scoreboard. And then finally it's realizing that there is no scoreboard and you're not fighting with this woman. Like, she's on your team, or better yet, from a frame perspective, there is no team. There's your way with zero expectations, and her way that if she wants in your life, she has to do things that are valuable to you, and that's the end goal. But yeah, and one of my favorite parts of this too, I have like 8 favorite parts, is the guy's response to this. Where is it? Just a little bit lower here, yeah. So he's like, well, no. Fuck no. First off, she would not have complained about the hands to Chad. Secondly, I actually stopped touching her body, and all I did was basically hold her arms. It was maybe only like a little rough. No worse than I would do when I'm playing with my kids. So I don't buy into all this bitching at me. Basically, this sub is just, let's mock some guys after following what we say word for word. You know what? Fuck that. Again, this one's kind of like, you can tell. There's a great post, which I don't know if I'm going to put it up. I can't remember if it's in a mids watch or not, but it's guys with no frame and the things they do. Wine More Please. One of the guys, he's been around for forever. Awesome guy. Probably the strongest frame within the red pill, married or single otherwise. And he brings up a very obvious strategy that you do when you're offering advice to a guy in a red pill context, is that you kind of have to pepper a frame check in it. In this case, Jack calling the guy a fucking idiot. Because he's not only did he do that, he listed like 8 or 9 takeaways for the guy that he could have some self-awareness and learn from. Didn't use any of them. And that's what guys with no frame do. They automatically latch on to that ego defense. Somebody attacked you as an alpha wolf. You better shut that shit down. And that's exactly what he did. And so you already know. At this point, the guy's too far gone. We ended up banning him from this, by the way. I think he had maybe one more field report. It could have even been this one, where I think it was one of the moderators, Huey McGill, finally said, like, look, man, we can't help you. You can't help yourself. This place isn't for you. And you have to, like, we're showing you the door before you end up doing something stupid. And we end up on the news with some red pill guy doing something that shouldn't have been done. And that was the end of it. And then we have a bunch of breakdowns later, but that's a different episode. So Jack looks at this. He's like, realize that this isn't the stinging rebuttal that you probably imagined it was in your mind, but just one more condemnation of your utter stupidity, particularly that word for word comment you just made. Like, it's impossible to follow Red Pill word for word. If you tried to combine all the Red Pilled content, the subreddits, the prerequisite books like No More Mr. Nice Guy, When I Say No I Feel Guilty, Married Man's Sex Life Primer, etc. Go to the popular blogs like Rollo, like Dalrock, like Ironwood. You'd find countless paradoxes, if not literal contradictions. And this is why your behavior is so contradictory to all the rest of us. Your wife wants to get you off, but you don't want to get messy. You're not even particularly in the mood to even have sex. So then she initiates. Then you get upset when she says your hands are cold, start pinning her down. Like, what the fuck, dude? Seriously. The reason why none of your behavior makes any sense to us is because it's like we're watching somebody park their car, open the door, lock the car, close the door, smash the window of their now locked car, grab the garage door opener out of their car, open the garage, walk into the garage, grab their spare key so they could lock their car again. So like I said, what the fuck, dude? Like, why did you do all this pointless shit? You could have either had a locked car or an unlocked car without all that hassle. So if you try to follow Red Pill word for word, this is what happens. Remember this too, guys. It's a theme I bring up on a lot of these ones. Don't take it literally, but take it seriously. And there's always agency for you. Don't just hand over agency to a bunch of random assholes on the internet. And so yeah, I suspect a lot of these contradictions stem from the main Red Pill subreddit, which is essentially an echo chamber of saying, wow, women are such shitty whores, aren't they? Like, realize though, that echo chamber is mostly generated by sexually frustrated single males in their early 20s who likely come from an upper middle class socioeconomic background and whose helicopter parents made them entitled in pretty much all the ways. I want to stand for the main subreddit too. There is a lot of switched on guys in there, but I will argue the switched on guys tend to be older. It's true. The younger guys really, and if you're online in the Red Pill space for any length of time, you're going to notice the drama and the entitlement and the nonsense always seems to follow the younger creators around. And there's a reason for that. It's a lot of guys just have to learn it the hard way. So continuing on though. So perhaps that demographic's advice may not be worth heeding wholesale, if not word for word, since it's probably that content that's causing you to think you need to have such an adversarial approach with your wife and causing you to reject all of our advice, even though we've practically all in unison said the same version of, you're doing it wrong, dude. And just so you know, that fuck that comment was not intended to convince you otherwise. This comment was written purely for any other married Red Pill readers who may be trying to swallow the Red Pill, but feel like they're now ending up in a needlessly adversarial relationship with their wife, and they're wondering what's happening. My hope is they, unlike you, realize their approach may be misguided because it involves too much anger, or a misunderstanding of frame, or whatever else it may be. You've clearly established yourself to be a hopeless cause, and given that you seem incapable of any introspection for any advice given here to you, then I can only recommend you stop posting on the Married Red Pill or on the Ask Married Red Pill, if only because your inevitably domestic violence charge will force you to do that anyway. Doesn't get much harsher than that. And this is, I mean, there's so many things I could take out of this one. And I monk mode first off, like he did monk mode. You're not self-aware just because you did monk mode. All you're doing is you're hiding from a discomfort. That's why I absolutely laugh at anybody who says monk mode is useful. And they can come up with all kinds of stories, but I'm like, I see too many guys implementing it and not a single guy has done it right. So I'm treating monk mode the same way I treat communism. Yeah, on paper it looks great, but in practice it never seems to work out that way. So this is Rambo. Rambo is when you do things with zero self-awareness. You jump in, both feet to everything red pill, and you listen word for every strategy, no matter how convoluted, without any thought as to whether it's applicable to your life, whether the speaker knows what he's talking about, whether the strategy works, whether it's been replicated, and whether it's actually working in your life. I talk a lot about OODA loops, or observe, orient, decide, act. He had no OODA loops. Like, there was about 5 situations in there, and he fucked up all of them. And here's how it usually went. He went into a situation with his mind. This is what woman is in my mind, evil Machiavellian mastermind. He went in this situation thinking, how do I be more alpha? Things happened, and he just responded, what would 23-year-old Chad do? And then he did the absolute biggest MGTOW, just got banned from the incel sub and came to the red pill answer possible. And when it didn't work, he's like, I never wanted it anyway. Leaves, and then repeat the process. And so you can kind of see, right? Like, these are the kind of guys who end up coming into like a purple pill debate space, or, you know, coming onto a feminist Discord channel saying, oh, the red pill doesn't work. I tried it and it ruined my marriage. And the girls all take him in with wonderful arms. And then they find out once he starts opening up about his own story, they're like, this guy's an idiot. And now it's all of a sudden the red pill is misogynist. So it's like, we can't catch a break. We catch loser men, and we've all been loser men at some point. You don't end up here without having at least like 5 minute of loser fame. But most guys fix it. They sort it out. They learn from their mistakes, they move on, and they, you know, reflect back on the past to have a good laugh about it. But there's a lot of guys you just kind of have to read the last rites to. And it's like Jack said, man. Eventually, if we don't kick you out, your domestic violence charge is going to force you to be kicked out. And so we'd rather just not wear this stink. So do remember this and keep this in mind. Every time you see guys talking about red pill your friends, red pill your family, like, are you willing to take responsibility for a guy who's completely clueless, gronking into a situation? I don't think so. Don't try to red pill your friends. Don't try to help them. The information is out there. If they want it, they know how to find it. And they need to learn to take responsibility for their own actions and be self-aware to their own situation. And you don't want any part of that, because I'm telling you right now, for every one Rule Zero dad or awesome married guy, there is going to be 500 alpha as wolves. Just keep that in mind. Last point I'll make on this one is that one-itis for Chad thing. So if your one-itis is for Chad, just realize it's not that you removed your scarcity. And that's when people talk about scarcity mindset, that's what they mean. They mean, like, what's that movie, Of Mice and Men? Where Lenny wants to pet the rabbit, he pets it so hard he like breaks its neck. So guys will have one-itis for their wives. She won't sleep with me. I just want her so bad. How do I get my wife to smash? And then they go to the married red pill and they find the space. Or they go to the red pill because, you know, that girl I'm interested in won't sleep with me. She shut me down. What do I do? And then they take that one-itis for their girl, their anger phase, and guys are offering some guidance, but they listen to the wrong voices. This is why we had Flair introduced. So that way, if you had 2 guys talking nonsense, at least one guy, you had half an idea. It's like, okay, maybe give this one a little more credence because he's been vetted by the community. It was never a trophy. It was more of a vetting strategy. But then they take that same scarcity mentality and they just wrap a red coat of paint on it. And instead of having one-itis for their woman, they have one-itis for Chad, or one-itis for the concept of being alpha, or one-itis for being part of the red pill super secret He-Man woman haters club, or one-itis for Trump or Jesus, or any number of things. And again, it all stems to that same field report I had a little bit ago. I think it's episode 14, maybe 15, about how religion isn't the answer. The point of this isn't that it's a collection of truth. Anytime you hear somebody say red pill is truth, you know they're lying to you. Either they're lying to you, or they're naive about it, or they're just stupid. And think about this guy with cold hands every time you hear a guy say red pill is truth. And just remember, stay the fuck away from that idiot, because he's going to screw up his life. And then he's going to make us all look bad. So I don't know how else to like harp on this. It's probably my favorite example of what not to do and some of the telltale signs of guys with no frame and the things they do. Hope you enjoyed. I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.